Right, so he was supposed to be here last week, but his wife had the audacity to have a baby. Ben, how's the last week of your life been, mate?
It's been chaotic. It's been strange. Our new album came out. My new baby came out, and apparently the world has come out to the streets, and there's riots and protests and all sorts going on. So it's a strange time.
It's weird, isn't it? Like I wasn't sure if I was going to address it at all, but it feels kind of weird. Like even talking to you coming up about some of the shitstorms to do with your new record feel relatively small shitstorms.
Right, exactly. So now I'm like, oh man, my problems seem irrelevant at this point. Yeah. But you know, I think it's high time that this happened. Really, you know, I think the world was headed for change. 2020 from the get-go, everyone was looking forward to it. I had a feeling. Have you
been creative during lockdown then? Because I do wonder how the times affect people that are songwriters like yourself.
I have. In fact, right before we started our conversation, I was writing a new song. So I've been trying to keep myself busy. Obviously, with 3 kids and a wife, I'm busy anyway. But I come up to this room up here, which is like our guest room. This is where I sort of, it's like my own little world. It's where I get to write and record and just sort of do music, because music's always been my escape. And I've been doing a lot of auditions for like movies and television shows and stuff like that up here too. So this is the magic room. Actually, this is the room I come to when the kids are going bonkers and I pretend like I need to work. Don't disturb me, babe. Really important things happening.
Sorry, love. Riffs wait for no one.
Exactly. If I don't go now, it'll disappear. Someone else will have it.
I wanted to ask a little bit about having a family and stuff now, because I've not hung around with you as a group of people since you were Maniacs. And the last time that I saw you was we were on a plane going to Rock on the Range, and you still give off the vibe of naughty school kids on the bus, even on an aeroplane. I just wondered, what is the vibe like in Asking Alexandria these days?
It's really boring. Like it's so funny. Like we spent all of 2018 and 19 pretty much in arenas in the States, and it was like, cool, we're doing it. We're in arenas now. We've taken the next step up, and we would play, and instead of celebrating like Asking Alexandria always used to do, it would be bedtime. Like, oh, that was a good show. Night, lads. I'll see you in the morning, bright and early. And I'd be up at 6 o'clock in the morning the next morning, having coffee or tea, and we'd all discuss the show the day prior. And yeah, man, you know what? I say it's boring, but just being drunk and hungover all the time gets really boring, you know. And I think we're older now, and it hurts a lot more to drink.
that post 32-day hangover that they tell you about is not a lie.
It's not a lie. And imagine just trying to play a show feeling like I've played shows recently on the last headliner, but because obviously we're all clean and free from drugs. None of us do any drugs anymore, which is a huge step. And when it comes to drinking, we still drink a bit because, you know, we enjoy a drink. But for me, it's like I stick with wine. I don't drink any spirits. I'll maybe have some beer, but really for me, it's like a few glasses of red wine, and that's it. You know, you don't really party on red wine.
Yeah,
you listen to music and talk on red wine. You know, so but there have been, obviously, if you drink too much red wine, you can still get that horrible hangover. And there's been a few times on the last few tours where, like, maybe once a week we'll have a drink. It's like, okay, well we've got, you know, 6 shows under our belt. We can have a drink tonight, and we'll have a drink. And because it's been 6 days and we're not drinking, it's like, okay, well, I'll have maybe a few too many, and you end up going to bed. And because it's red wine, you sleep really well, and you wake up, and it's like you wish yesterday had never happened. That carries through onto stage, and it's just not fun. When we were young, it's like, oh, whatever, we'll drink through it. Hair of the dog, we'll be drunk on stage. It doesn't matter. And you never gave yourself that time to feel that shit. But now, I can't just keep on drinking, and we don't just keep on drinking. So now the hangovers are so bad, that's almost the deterrent. Like there's nights it's like, should we have a drink tonight? It's like, yeah, but nah, let's just go to bed instead.
One of the fascinating things that I didn't get to talk to you on the last cycle, and knowing you all individually the way that I do, one of the things that really stood out was I wanted to ask about the creative decision of coming back together again, because I saw you play a show at the Camden Roundhouse before Danny left, and you looked like two different groups of people. Like Danny looked one way and you guys looked another. And so when that split came, it made a lot of sense. And then Danny's creative output is what it is outside of Asking Alexandria. Now, when he came back, personal stuff is by the by. You've done that a million times in the press. What I'm interested in is creatively, how the two forces that from the outside seem so polar opposite come together. What were the agreements when you were coming together at that time?
We didn't really have any agreements as such. It's just, I think we learned a lot from our time apart, and we figured out sort of what went wrong. And back then, as you know, we were just so fucked up on drugs and alcohol all the time. There was no sort of clarity. You know, we were just kind of balls to the wall, go, go, go. We were a freight train just speeding towards a wall. And I think the big thing that happened was, and that big divide that you see between Asking the four, you know, musicians and then Danny, is when he had other creative things that he wanted to express and get out, we then didn't understand why. We were like, well, what are you talking about? We've got everything we need here with Asking. We've worked so hard to get here. Why do you want more? And so we kind of stifled that creativity, and we're like, no, man, you have to concentrate on this solely. And so he was like, okay, I get it. Which led it to bleed into Asking. And that's where you see that divide. It's like, well, Danny looks this way and we look this way. That's because we didn't allow him to have another outlet for that stuff that he wanted to explore. And so it came in and just smudged Asking Alexandria. And it was kind of just a traveling shit show at that point. So when he left, you know, which was inevitable the way we were all going, when he did come back, we'd all grown up a lot. We'd all learned a lot. And we went, okay, it's important to have other outlets. Otherwise, it does bleed into Asking Alexandria. And whilst Asking Alexandria is we're all very open-minded about music. We love all kinds of music. You know, some things just don't work and some things do when you're in a group of musicians and creators together. And it wasn't working that way. But because we didn't allow him to explore other avenues, that's why it kind of all seeped in. And so now it's just like, okay, well, he wants to do a singer-songwriter thing. He can do that as Danny Warsnop. He wants to do this. He can do that as Danny Warsnop. And for me, a real big thing that made me realize that is when I started acting. And I was like, oh, shoot, this is a really different outlet for me. And I thoroughly enjoyed getting that creativity out of me in a completely different way that wasn't Asking. And I was like, I get it. Like, I understand now. And so now that he's back, we don't stifle him. You know, he's a songwriter just like we all are. And he wants to write some country music or some blues music or some fucking jazz, hip hop, fusion music. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to us anymore. We let him go and do his thing. And then we all reconvene when it's time to do Asking, and we do Asking.
And so the self-titled was really successful. Like so Alone in a Room was happening on radio as I moved here. And I think I would describe the self-titled as having quite an octane-friendly sound, which begs the question, when we move to a new record, Like a House on Fire is quite different to the self-titled. Not as big as some people are suggesting, but it's quite different. What makes you go in a different direction when you've had a successful record before it?
We've already done that record. You know, we've never been a band that sort of found success in one avenue and stuck with it. And I think anyone that knows on Asking Alexandria, or even anyone that doesn't, and anyone that listens to Asking Alexandria and listens to our discography can see that we had monumental success with Stand Up and Scream. But Reckless and Relentless sounded nothing like Stand Up and Scream. We're like, okay, well, we've done that now. And to us as artists and songwriters, it's a cop-out to find something that really, really works and to just do it because you know it works, even if it doesn't feel right, even if you're having to force yourself to write it. To me, that's what a sellout is. And so, you know, Reckless and Relentless compared to Stand Up and Scream are very, very different records, very different. And people maybe say, well, no, they're not, but they are. If you listen to them musically, they're nothing at all alike. Sure, I think people just hear screaming and breakdowns and go, okay, well, it's all the same. But it's not. And if you compare From Death to Destiny to Reckless and Relentless or Stand Up and Scream, again, it's a huge jump. And so we've always just progressed and done what we feel is right for us at the time. And I think we've held on to that because that's what we did with Stand Up and Scream. When we did Stand Up and Scream, there were no expectations, there were no rules, no one knew who the fuck we were. So we were like, well, there was no one telling us to sound a certain way, so we did what we wanted to do at that moment in time and hoped that people would listen to it and be able to relate to it and enjoy it. And that's kind of what we've just always done. We've not written a record because people have been like, it should sound like this because you know it's going to be successful. It's always just been how we have felt as songwriters and what's influenced us at the time and what we've been through. And so for instance, for Like a House on Fire, we've been, like I said earlier on, we've been in arenas and you know, 15, 20,000 cap sheds for 2 years, and we've been playing all the biggest festivals in the world. And you look out into those crowds every night and you see and feel people's reactions, and that's what fed Like a House on Fire. It's like, okay, the best parts of our show always are like the bridge at the end of Alone in a Room, and there's 10, 15,000 people with their hands in the air just jumping up and down, having the time of their life. Or we go and play Moving On, which is an epic like rock ballad, and there's people in the crowd crying and singing whilst they're crying. And then, you know, we play Someone Somewhere acoustic, and there's lighters in the air, and again people are just crying and thanking us for writing the song. It's like, okay, this is what rock and roll is all about. Rock and roll is an outlet for people to express what they're going through. And a lot of the time what people are going through is a really shit situation because life's fucking hard. Yeah. And so instead of dwelling on the shit situations, Like a House on Fire, we discussed going through the shit situations and how we have managed to get from there to here. You know, that all wanting light at the end of the tunnel, that thing that everyone is searching for. It's like, okay, well, we did it. We went through the fucking shit show and we made it here. And that's what Like a House on Fire was for us. And that's why it might sound slightly different, but we were in a much different headspace. We were in a much more positive headspace than we ever have been before.
Like, I'm quite intrigued because, like, I think it's a situation of kind of 2 threes. I can see it from 2 different sides. Bear with me on this one. So I understand, like, it would be ridiculous of me to ignore certain reaction to this record. And I understand if you're a kid and you're like, that's my Asking Alexandria, the Asking Alexandria of the past, that's who they are. I understand it from that point of view. If you look at the band today, I had it when I was a kid and I first got into metal. My band were Metallica during Load, right? So I know what it's like to have. I was on the side of this thing, but all these people that didn't get it. The flip side to that is, I think there's a lot of bands that came from that time period that are either not here anymore or are about a 20th as successful as Asking Alexandria because they're still doing that.
100%.
How do you feel about your relationship with what I'm going to call, respectfully, the scene?
Isn't it scary calling it the scene because people get offended, but it shouldn't be offensive.
Look, if you're offended, I was just using it as a term. Come on, I'm just asking.
Yeah, exactly. No, and you know the funny thing is, I can understand too, and like you, for me, when I was growing up, for instance, Avenged Sevenfold, one of my favorite bands ever, and when their White album came out, their self-titled, I put it on and I went, oh, what the fuck is this shit? And I turned it off. I was like, this is fucking crap. Fast forward to now, and that album is probably my favorite album they've ever ever produced. And it just goes to show that, yes, people don't like initial change, but I think just because it's a shock to the system. It's like when you jump in an ice cold bathtub, you're like, oh God, this is fucking awful. And your instant reaction is to get out. But if you stay in the bathtub for long enough, your body adjusts and you're not in pain anymore. And you realize this is actually good for me. This is good. I'm glad I did this. And you get out and you're healthier. And it's the same thing. The initial shock is there. And I get that. I had it with Avenged. I had it with Slipknot. People have it with Asking. But I just ask them to give it time, because it will become your favorite album, just like the White Album did for me, just like I'm sure you fell in love with Load afterwards, after listening to it and taking it for what it actually is.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Do you relate to that pocket of of music anymore? Like, let me put it this way, right? Let's say Warped hadn't folded, right? Or become a limited thing, stopped becoming a touring festival. If Warped Tour was happening this summer, do Asking Alexandria fit in your eyes?
I mean, it's such a hard one, because no, I don't think we do. And it's not because I don't appreciate where we came from, because I fucking do. I've been doing this for a long time. And when I was a child, Warped Tour was the epitome of touring. It was everything I wanted to do, and we accomplished that goal. But the simple fact of the matter is people do grow and they do change. And Warped Tour was there for me, just like Stand Up and Scream and Reckless and Relentless were there for me as a very specific outlet for that very specific time in my life. And I needed it then. And it was something that helped me progress to the next level and the next chapter of my life. It helped me grow. It helped me learn from mistakes. It helped me go through and make mistakes and be able to grow and learn from that time in my life. But I'm not in that time in my life anymore. And that's not discrediting what it is now, because there are so many people that are in that time in their life now. And music, that's the thing about music, you know, it's forever evolving and forever growing. And it's not because music magically does that on its own. It's because the musicians and the artists do it. And so I get a little bit annoyed when people go, oh, bands just say they're getting mature and that's why they don't scream anymore. But maturity doesn't necessarily mean you can't scream anymore. And I agree. No, it doesn't. There are lots of bands that mature and continue to scream and make very, very heavy music. But that's because that's where those musicians, that's where their journey has taken them. That is their outlet. That's how they create, and that's what they get out. And maturing doesn't mean not screaming anymore. Maturing means growing. It means changing into someone else and learning and taking you from here to here, and wherever that is where you end up. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm saying if you scream you're immature. It's just saying for me, my journey of maturity has taken me here, and that's fine, and that should be fine with everyone. And our old albums are still there for people to listen to and enjoy. I still listen to our old albums from time to time and put them on and go, man, this is cool. Like, I listened to A Prophecy not long ago. I was like, man, this song is great. This song is so good. But I would never write it again, because it wouldn't be genuine. It would just be writing it for the sake of writing it.
Yeah. And what do you think your music says about you in 2020? Because I've had moments, Ben. Like, the thing is, we're mates. Like, total transparency. Like, if you're out and about and I see you, I'll come over and hang out and just talk bollocks with you.
Yeah.
And I know how seriously you take your music. Like, you know what I mean? I'm sat here in a fucking Full of Hell t-shirt, but we're friends, and I know how seriously you take your music. And there's been moments like the solo in Moving On where I'm like, fucking go on, geezer. And what does your music in 2020 say about where you are? When you say you can't relate to that music that you made in the past, what does your music say about you in 2020?
It says that we're in a much better place than we were. And that is simply a fact. You know, when we were writing Reckless Relentless, and he's talking about white hills and the oceans, he's talking about cocaine and alcohol addiction and everything that comes along with it. This now says, it should say to people, if they're actually listening to it, we've been there, we've been through the shit. And either, as a listener, you've been through it too, and now you're here with us, in which case, fuck yeah, you know how much better it is on this side, or you're going through that shit, and we're here to tell you it will be okay. We're here to tell you that you can make it through, that it's not hopeless, it's not the end of the world, and that there is light at the end of that tunnel. And that's what our music says now. Just like back then, our music said, we're a fucking traveling shit show. We're lost. We've been sucked into this black abyss and lost who we are as humans. And so we put that out to the world. And it was like, back then it was we're there with you. We're going through this shit show too. And now we've made it through the other side. And there's so many people, I know there are, that have made it to the other side with us, that are still on this journey with us. And it seems to be growing every day. And it's sad when people can't understand that, and they get upset. They get very caught up on very trivial things that music shouldn't be about, like, oh, where are the screams? Well, what does that matter? Because the song, no song that we've ever released has ever been about screaming. We're not screaming to scream. We're screaming a message, and that message was anger and hurt and pain and anguish, and we're not there anymore. So now we're delivering a very different message, and so it's very strange when people want us to scream for the sake of screaming, to me. But maybe that's just because I don't relate to it anymore.
Well, last question from me. When was the last time you did write something like that? Like, just for people out there, like if they are like in any way disillusioned with where you're at, like, when was the last time you even wrote something like that?
Out of the joy of writing it, for that, probably like Run Free, you know, back in from Death to Death.
Fucking hell. Wow.
A long time ago. We have recently written something very, very heavy with lots and lots of screaming, and we were like, you know, we've got lots of fans that want to hear that, so let's do something. And so we went into the studio probably about 3 weeks ago, and we recorded something really heavy with lots and lots of screaming in it. And we decided not to release it because it just felt so wrong. It was like, this isn't, we're not connecting with this. And so if we release this, there's going to be a lot of probably younger kids or fans of our older sound that are going to be like, this is awesome. This is what we've been waiting for. But then what? What does that say about us? Okay, well, we've given it to you now. We're not doing it again. This was just a one-off for you. But this band isn't about that. You know,
you'd kind of look a bit like Ronald McDonald serving burgers rather than an artist creating.
Yeah, and it would just be silly. And to me, that is selling out. And I'll tell you what, if we're ever in a situation where we find ourselves in the studio screaming down the microphone again, it's for a reason, and because we feel that that is the correct way to present what we're feeling at that time. And, you know, if you do listen to Like House on Fire and you listen to, like, I don't know, the bridge in Down to Hell where Danny's screaming, I want to find somewhere to lose my mind, dig around inside and go a little crazy. He is yelling that. He's not doing the classic, like, growly scream, but he's fucking screaming, but he's really screaming to the point where if you did that all the time, you damage your voice. But that's because that was the emotion that section of that song needed, and that he wanted to portray to the world. And so if you ever do hear us screaming, it's not because we've been told we have to. It's because that's where we are at that point in time. And that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be angry screams. You know, I don't think, like I said, in the Down to Hell bridge, those aren't angry screams. Those are manic screams, because at the time he was in the booth and just feeling insane. And that's how you portray that. And so for us, screaming has kind of become something that we want to use really well. Like, we want that scream to mean something. If it's there for a reason. It is there because we're angry, or we're pissed off, or we're feeling manic, or scared by something. It's not just there because people are like, well, you should scream in the verses and sing in the chorus.
Yeah. I guess the best thing we can do, Ben, I reckon, is let's give this, when the world opens up again and you've been able to take this record on the road for a little while, come back and we'll have a chat, and we'll see if reaction has changed.
Yeah.
But go on, mate.
I know it's going to, because I remember it's like when we released The Violence, people were like, it sounds like Maroon 5. I'm like, what fucking Maroon 5 album? Because I want it. Like, what?
I was surprised when I heard The Violence, I'll be honest.
but then we went out and played it live, and I was like, "Oh, check it out, man!" As soon as we play this live, and then okay, so you know, you've been to a million festivals and shows. When a band plays a new song live, the crowd more often than not are sat there like,
piss break.
They don't know the song, they can't sing it, they don't know when to do anything. They're taking it in, whether they like it or not, it's a different thing. But that initial reaction you get, they're taking it in. The very first time we ever played The Violence, we walked out on stage and we opened our set with it. And everyone was like, that's a fucking ballsy move. Immediately, as soon as we kick on the band and the fucking, we played it at a festival. There was fucking 15, 20,000 people up off their feet, all jumping. And I was like, this is why we wrote this fucking song. This is fucking sick. And I know that's what's going to happen when we play They Don't Want What We Want. And I know people are going to cry when we play I Don't Need You. And that's why we wrote these songs. We wrote these songs with, like I said, with that in mind, the rock and roll show in mind.
Ben, love you, mate. Congrats to you and the missus, and we'll see you out and about soon.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.